dominating the game in terms of game planning. You can talk about, everyone talks about the Celtics. They got the size, the length, the athleticism to defend Kyrie and KD, but they also have the scheme. And the defensive game plan they put together in relation to the offensive adjustments that the Nets has made has been incredible to me. The ability to take away the other team's two best players. That's what NBA coaching in the playoffs is all about, is not letting the other team's best players beat you. And that's exactly what Coach Udoka has been able to do. By adding another defender, by getting up and underneath Kyrie Irving, by getting up and underneath Kevin Durant, by adding a second defender, it's been absolutely terrific. Hey, let me tell you something. The Celtics might lose, but those two guys, he's taking those guys out and making someone else make a play. The Nets' lack of ball movement and people movement, they're playing Nets basketball. They should be playing more like, quite honestly, the Golden State Warriors. With ball movement and people movement, now you don't know where your help is coming from. Right now, the Celtics are absolutely out-coaching and out-executing in terms of schemes the Nets.
Let me say this, Coach. I completely agree with you. And this is where we have to look at Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I happen to believe that Kevin Durant is the best player on the planet. That's how I feel about Kevin Durant. He has not looked that way in games 1 and 2. I've never seen Kevin Durant look this bad and this rattled. Now, it's partly him. He's missing shots, and we get all of that. That can happen to anybody. It's partly the physicality, and that's thwarting him to some degree. We haven't really seen that happen to him before. But the reason why I bring up accountability as it pertains to him and Kyrie Irving is when it comes to the coaching. I happen to be a fan of the human being that is Steve Nash. Steve Nash has always been class personified, a good dude, and I have no questions about his basketball acumen. But, Coach, you know this better than me. There's a difference between knowing and teaching. Coaches, at their heart, are teachers. And it might not be for the superstars, the legendary talents that exist for this game, but all the parts that are around them matter. And Kyrie Irving was on the record stating, we don't really need a coach. How you feel about that now? Because let me tell you something. Udoka has coached under Greg Popovich. He's coached in several places. This man has experience as an assistant, so he was ready for this opportunity. And we are seeing what he is doing and how exceptional he is at doing it. And we can't ignore that. On the flip side, we're wondering about Steve Nash. We're not condemning him. We're not sitting up in there and saying you don't know what you're doing. Nobody's saying that about Steve Nash. What we're saying is we're looking to see him match what Udoka's doing, just like we would with any other coach. If you're going to look at the players, you have to look at the coach. And the only reason I bring up the players is because Sean Marks, the executive that runs the Brooklyn Nets, there is no way on earth he made the decision to bring Steve Nash in without getting the okay from Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And you have to know, because Kevin Durant is a two-time champion and a two-time NBA Finals MVP and will go down as one of the greatest, most prolific scorers and one of the greatest players in NBA history. Don't even question it, okay? We got that going on, and we know how electrifying Kyrie Irving can be. You're both champions. How do you not know that you don't need coaching? Ty Lue is one of the great coaches on the NBA level. Kevin Durant played for Steve Kerr. He's one of the top 15 coaches of all time. How could you embrace having a coach with no experience? So what? That was about you as a player.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the team. And it is not beyond the realm of comprehension where when all is said and done in this series, we may come back to that decision more than we come back to the individual player performances.
Yeah, to be continued. But Kyrie didn't touch the ball in the final, 243, which is pretty crazy.
1 for 17 combined, those two dudes.
Yeah. Coach, it's a pleasure. You're
Thanks,
coming
Molly.
back, apparently. We're going to have an NIL roundtable.
There we go.
Stephen A. set
Let's
that
go.
Up,
I love that, man.
So we'll make that happen.
And we can talk about Boston's defense, and they deserve a boatload of credit, Will Bond. And Boston's defense is sensational. I know that. And I'm not going to go where where Kendrick Perkins, rather, went the other day where he was talking about KD getting punked. I'm not going there because it's impossible for me to feel that way about him. But, my God, I have never seen Kevin Durant look this bad. It's not about the performance. It's not about the fact that he's 4 for 17 overall. To some degree, it's about the fact that he's 0 for 10 in the second half. To another degree, Will Bond, it's about the fact that he looked shook. He looked rattled. And I never thought I would see something like that happen to Kevin Durant on the offensive side of the ball. Certainly some nights are better than others. But we've never looked at Kevin Durant and said, my God, he looks awful. He looks like he can't get anything going. There's nothing that's working. They're all up in him. 1 minute he's double teamed. Another minute Tatum defending him straight up. And he's blocking his shot. List goes on and you crossing over and bouncing the ball off of your own foot and it's going out of bounds. He looked completely rattled. He looked completely shook. It was an abysmal, embarrassing performance by Kevin Durant. And the Brooklyn Nets are on the verge of getting swept. I can't believe that those words are coming out of my mouth. Now, I got them winning the series in 7 games. There's still a possibility, but obviously I ain't too damn confident about that right now. They're on the verge of getting swept. Swept. And I'm talking, and listen, I understand. I don't think it's going to happen. I believe they're going to win Game 3, Wilbon. But let me also say, Kevin Durant ain't alone. Then let me indict Mr. Kyrie Irving. Both of them combined to shoot 8 of 30 from the field. Just abysmal. Did you hear what Kyrie Irving alluded to after the game? Basically alluding to himself being docile. Like that, Wilbon, check me because your vocabulary is more extensive than mine. But docile, unenthused, lacking energy and fervor. How the hell that happened with all that time he missed?
One game.
Hold on, wait a minute. I asked the question. How that happened with all that time he missed?
It's one game. I'm not drawing this many conclusions. Here's a conclusion. Here's the only one I'm willing to draw. Those two, as great as they are, and Kevin Durant is still the best player in the game. They got harassed in the bad shooting, Stephen A. I don't care how great a player is. We saw this happen with the bad boy Pistons and Michael Jordan. Harassed. Now, it's not as physical now as it was then. But for today, in the context of great defense, the Celtics can play it. We saw Bird harassed into this kind of stuff by the Lakers' great defense when they had it. We saw Magic harassed into this kind of stuff when he had to play against the Celtics and great defense. This is what happens. This is basketball. It's a series. It's not the NFL. To draw 400 conclusions from last night. Here's the conclusion. They better figure out how to set better screens. They better figure out, and you mentioned this on Get Up this morning, they better figure out how to pass the basketball. You look at all those clips that we have of KD. What's going on? He is in ISO mode. That has to stop. He is not going to beat 2 and 3 Boston Celtics defenders. This defense is too good for that, and God help the Nets if Robert Williams comes back at any time in this series. But Stephen A., I think Brooklyn's going to respond. They're going to look at film. Look at these clips of Kevin Durant. Where's the ball movement? He's going to figure it out. As he says, I'm KD. Y'all know who I am. He and Kyrie will figure out with the help of the coaching staff. We've got to play better offensive team basketball than this. I think they will. I think they'll win Game 3. I don't think they're on the verge of anything. And I picked the Celtics, and I'm staying with it. And I'm saying still Celtics in 6 games. But let's not go. I'm not ready to indict anybody yet. They had a really bad game last night. What great players and great teams do is respond.
Stephen A., let me just say something really quickly, because Wilbon brought up coaching, and you also brought up Kyrie and his energy, and I'll just say this. It is Ramadan, and from what I understand, he's fasting, and that's tough, not eating all day long, then going out there and playing during the playoffs. Like, that is real, and that can have an effect on your energy. But also, I was talking to Coach Seth Greenberg, who will join us in just a bit. We're going to get into Jay Wright with him, and he was saying that coaching appears to be an issue for the Nets. How much of
You're damn right it's playing a role. Listen, we have to be honest here, okay? First of all, I respect what you brought up about Kyrie Irving because that's incredibly, incredibly valid. And we do understand that. But the point is that it didn't stop him from doing what he did in Game 1. So, in other words, it's an extreme from Game 1 to Game 2. Wilbon's absolutely right. It's just one game. But guess what? They only got 2 left, really. I mean, you can't afford 2 more losses. So let's understand that the numbers are very palpable and they're very, very significant. It's not 1 of 82 games. It's 1 of 7. And the first team to 4 wins. And Boston's now got 2. All they need is 2 more. The Brooklyn Nets have got to win Saturday. If they go down 3-0, this series is over. And they were on the verge of getting swept. And who thought they were going to do that? And the reason why the coaching is so pivotal, Wilbon knows this. If you're a player and you're a star player, a veteran, who's won a championship in Kyrie Irving's situation. 2, if you're Kevin Durant. And you are on the record, well, we don't really need a coach. Remember what they said. Remember that this situation,
Yeah.
we don't really need a coach.
Great point.
Well, guess what? Yeah, you do. Because it's not. Because here's the key thing. Why would you make a statement like that? You know why Kyrie made that statement? Because he was thinking about Kyrie. If you're thinking about the rest of the team, coach, you know why? Because you know everyone ain't Kyrie. Everybody can't beat you. Everybody can't explode and drop 60. Everybody's not as gifted and as much of a magician as he is. That the same applies to Kevin Durant. And for those two to be the faces and the cornerstone of this franchise and not prioritize the experience necessary in order to coach and counsel and tutor the pieces around them, that means they're accountable for the coaching. Because Sean Marks went to them to get that approval to bring in a coach who we all love and respect as a person. And Steve Nash, a good man and very knowledgeable about basketball. But he never coached a day in his life. And they said, hey, we don't really care because they wanted to be comfortable. And if you're thinking about yourself and you're not thinking about the team, you make mistakes like that. And a series like this is when it comes back to bite you. Because I can tell you this, Ime Udoka, that brother can coach.
Stephen A., you raise a great point about sort of the Nets culture and what it is they wanted to put together, and KD and Kyrie doing that, and it's all fine and well. And I agree with you. But here's where I'm going to piggyback off what you just said. Great defense in any sport makes you even more uncomfortable. And so what did the great coaches, what were they able to do when they got in these series? And you look back over time with Phil Jackson and Pat Riley and Chuck Daly, and I don't have to go, obviously Greg Popovich. What were they able to do? They were able to, on off days and at halftimes, find ways particularly to get their stars if they were a little rattled, and you mentioned that with KD and what that defense is doing to him. They countered that. Okay, so that's what the Nets have to do. And I'm going to ask you this question because you've been around the Nets more than I have this season. Do you think they have that within them? Do you think that KD as a leader, we know Kyrie ain't nobody's leader. He's a follower. He's never been able to lead anyone, but he's been able to follow a great player. Do you think that KD, with Steve Nash's assistance, do they have, and I do mean that in that order, do they have that in them? We know Kyrie, he ain't trying to be coached. He's not interested in that. He already told us that. But this is what they have to do. They have this off day. Look, they got a one-game series. So I don't believe, yes, they're on the verge of being swept because they got to win game 3. I believe they can and will do that at home.
I believe
the question
win
is,
game 3.
do they have it in them to respond strategically, emotionally, intellectually in a basketball context? Do they have that in them? That's what I'm waiting to see.
Let me answer the question. Let me answer your question, Wilbon. You've covered this game for decades. You forgot more basketball than most people know. Just for the record, okay?
That.
Here's the deal, my man. Wilbon, I'm going to throw something at you, and I'm going to ask you this question. You and I both know there's differences between good and great, and then there are differences between greatness and legends. Somebody called me last night to talk to me about that when talking about KD. They said greatness and legends. There's no question he's one of the great ones. We ain't debating that. But when you talk about legends, one of the reasons you look at some of those other legends was because of their ability to galvanize the troops. Yeah, we don't talk about Isaiah Thomas nearly as much as we should. But with all of those bad boy Pistons there, the littlest dude was Isaiah Thomas, and he was the ringleader. He was the legend. When you look at Michael Jordan, legend. Kobe, legend. LeBron, regardless of what people want to say about him, legend. When you D Wade, legend. When you got people around that you know, they look at you. And you are the one that galvanizes them. You are the one that holds them accountable. You ain't just making shots, putting up points, or doing your job. You're demanding that they do it and holding them accountable. We don't know if that's KD. And that's what we're on the verge of finding out.
Stephen A., you are totally right, but you do that when you're down in a playoff series. I'm glad you mentioned the great Isaiah Thomas. Chicago's own, who had these same things where they were down in a series and he probably had a 4 for 16 game. And you're right. You are the guy as the leader who has to galvanize that team in a way that doesn't happen in any other sport. You got too many guys in a baseball locker room. You got way too many guys in an NFL locker room, even though you have leaders, plural. In professional basketball, in the NBA, you got a guy. And that's on KD. Do I believe he's up to that? Yes, I do. It's time to show it. Yeah. I mean, we've seen all the legend, Magic Johnson and Boston Garden, Junior Skyler. We've seen all this. When you're down in a series, that's the glory of playoff basketball. So they're on the verge of being swept. How do they get off that verge? By winning Game 3.
I believe he's up to it.
Simple thing. He's got a couple of days to figure that out.
I believe he's up to it. He damn well had better be by Saturday. They don't win
need
Saturday.
More we, and less me on the Nets. And Saturday, you two will be on the